And joining us now is one Joe diGenova, legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
All right, over the weekend, yesterday, Rudy Giuliani was on CBS's Face the Nation, and he said that they are in negotiations with the Mueller team to have a meeting between the president to sit down with Robert Mueller this week or next week. We have negotiations ongoing with them. We have an outstanding offer to them, he said, and he said it relates basically to the Russia collusion thing, which we think there is no evidence, and the president didn't do anything wrong. I don't think you're a big fan of this, are you?
Oh, I would never recommend that the president sit down with Mr. Mueller. I think the Mueller probe has reached all limits of propriety a long time ago, exceeded propriety, whether it's the conflicts of interest or his basic appointment in the first place. But, you know, I think Rudy is basically trolling Mueller. I can't imagine they're going to sit down, but if they are, then there have to be limitations which would limit it solely to Russian collusion, a limited amount of time in the White House, Mueller and one other lawyer, no FBI agents present, all kinds of strong limitations. But, who knows? I can't imagine they really want to do this. I think this is for public consumption.
Yeah, and the public consumption thing is really interesting because it seems like this battle is really about public relations for the most part. Because, again, as you've said many times, and we've talked about this, the sitting U.S. president can't be indicted. This is a question of impeachment, and impeachment is a public relations battle. So it's incumbent upon the president, it seems, to constantly push back as much as he can on how corrupt and how nonsense this investigation is. And it makes me wonder, at what point does he actually get involved and start doing the things that he needs to do in order to expose potentially his good name? So, for instance, Devin Nunes wants him to take away redactions from the FISA warrant application. He could find out the scope of the investigation right now if he wanted to. He could have Mueller just give it to him. Or he could fire Bob Mueller if he wanted to. When do we start seeing those types of things happen?
Well, I think the president's instincts are to do just that, and I would advise him to declassify almost every document in this matter because none of it involves sources and methods. None of it involves threats to national security. It all involves embarrassment to the FBI and the DOJ under Obama. But the problem is he's being advised by the White House counsel, Don McGahn, not to do it because McGahn believes that it will look like he's trying to interfere with the investigation. Now, how exposing the truth about something can be interfering with the investigation is beyond me. But as you've seen from the polling, 1% think that the Russian issue is important. 1% of the populace.
Yeah, nobody cares about it outside of Washington. Yet here we are, this many months into it, and Bob Mueller is still pursuing things.
Well, this is the folly of Rod Rosenstein appointing a special counsel. He was embarrassed because he didn't like the fact that he didn't know about the Comey memos on loyalty to the president and all that sort of nonsense. This is Rosenstein's fault. He's responsible for stealing this time away from a new president.
Matt Gaetz was on Fox with Bill Hemmer on Friday, and he said something interesting, and I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but I found it interesting. He said, I believe money was paid to people to collect intelligence on the Trump campaign. And he predicts that's why the outstanding documents regarding the Russia probe have not been produced and why the DOJ and the FBI are stonewalling. Do you have any feeling, any opinion on that?
I don't think there's any doubt that people received compensation in some form, either expenses or money. We know that Stefan Halper received compensation. He got fees for spying on behalf of the FBI. So I think probably there is some information in there about that. But most of it is probably information about, again, I think the identity of these informants, which is no big secret anymore since they've all been exposed. So I'm not quite sure precisely of any value whatsoever in keeping any of this secret anymore. And Nunes is correct, and so we'll just see what happens.
All right, we're watching also another thing coming out of the Mueller investigation, and that's Paul Manafort's trial is set to start this week on Tuesday in Alexandria. Mm-hmm. The focus of the trial is about spending. It's about tax evasion, bank fraud, and not about, of course, Russia.
Well, this is the shiny object case. It has absolutely nothing to do with Russian collusion. It's an embarrassment to Mr. Mueller. It was designed to create pressure on Manafort to do whatever. I mean, who knows? Cooperate on what? He wasn't even in the campaign for more than 3 months. He never knew Donald Trump prior to that time. This is an effort by the special counsel to justify his existence. Unfortunately, it does just the opposite. It shows that his actual manifesto, the Russian collusion, was for naught. And he ends up with this being his biggest case, along with 25 Russians that he'll never see in 2 other cases.
Can you? I'm looking at this case, and it's curious to me for a number of reasons. But one is, you look at Michael Cohen's treatment by Bob Mueller. He handed over the evidence to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York and allowed them to basically pursue this case against Cohen. Yet in Manafort's case, he's doing it personally. Do you read anything into that? Neither of those things have anything to do with Russian collusion. They're far afield. But is there a reason he's still maintaining control of the Manafort case?
Well, I know people think that Bob Mueller is the second coming of Christ, but he isn't. He's actually a guy who, I don't know if you've ever seen the famous tape of him speaking at the Justice Department to a group of prosecutors. He follows somebody else who gives a ring-ding speech about locking people up, and Mueller says, "I really like that guy. I love to put people in jail." Now, any serious prosecutor would never say anything like that in public, because what it does is it demeans the very important public function of a prosecutor in a free society. Listen, Mueller is a very problematic person. He never should have been appointed. Manafort is an insult to him. You got to understand, Mueller is a Brahmin. He's a guy with a trust fund. He's lived all his life never having to work. And I'm not criticizing his service in Vietnam as a Marine. You know, all of the people who served in Vietnam are wonderful people. It doesn't mean everything that they do for the rest of their life they get a pass for. Mueller has become a thug, and it's an embarrassment. Everything he's done up till now has produced absolutely nothing except political and governance chaos. That is not what special prosecutors are supposed to be there for.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes and if the president does indeed sit down with him. Joe, thank you so much. We always look forward to you visiting us.
You bet.